morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to continue our look at the complete history of the Pokemon trading card game by taking a good old look at Rising Rivals. And I'll be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, I was kind of taken aback by this one, because I could have sworn the Supreme Victors came after Platinum. Just to be clear, I've double-checked, and it definitely didn't, but that was a little bit weird to me. And I was playing at the time. I attended a national championships where everybody got given a pack of Rising Rivals, which is a really good memory. There's one round where they were like, hey, you've all got a pack of Rising Rivals in front of you. That is one of my best Rising Rivals memories. And in just a moment, I'll tell you which is a card we all wanted to pull out of those packs. You probably won't be surprised to hear that someone did want me. Now, Rising Rivals was released in Japan on December the 26th, 2008, bit of Boxing Day action, and it was released in English on the 20th of May, 2009, just in time for, well, a little bit before. Now, it was the second Platinum set, although the, ninth or something Diamond and Pearl set, there were many Diamond and Pearl sets, but this was the second of the Platinum set, and one of the really cool things it did specifically was it still had those SP Pokemon that were introduced in Platinum, but what it did was it introduced some more categories. So in Platinum you had ones like Crobat G that were Team Galactic's Pokemon, but they added in Pokemon GL. These were Gym Leader Pokemon like Floatzel, that is Wake's Floatzel. Now, it wasn't called Wake's Floatzel, it was just called Floatzel GL, as opposed to previous Gym Leaders Pokemon that have had the Gym Leader name in them. But we all know because it was GL. And there were Elite Four Pokemon, like, for instance, let's go for Sizzle, which was an Elite Four Pokemon. There we go. Now, of course, one thing we do need to mention at this stage, and I am beyond delighted about this, there was a Mamoswine in the set, and it was a Gym Leader Mamoswine. I adore this Mamoswine, and let's be clear, right, the competition is not fierce, but this will probably go down as, so far, the best Mamoswine we've had. Pokebody that puts 1 damage counter on each active Pokemon between turns, excluding water Pokemon like Mamoswine, and then a very expensive attack that does 60 plus 10 to each of your opponent's bench while spreading damage with a Pokebody. It wasn't a great card by any stretch, but it's still probably the best Mamoswine we've had. And of course, a reminder here that all of the SP Pokemon were basics, even though something like a Mamoswine should be a stage 2. Now, we did have some secret rares in the set. We had some secret rare Pikachu. Now, there were 3 in total. You had the secret rare Pikachu that goes back to the early days of the game, with the lovely Arita artwork, though clearly redone a little bit. And then you had Flying Pikachu and Surfing Pikachu, which were essentially redos of early promos. And they were secret rares. They were numbered above the top of the set. 1, 12, 13, and 14 out of 111. The other thing that Rising Rivals had that was really cool was this mini secret rare set based on Rotoms of a very weird holo pattern. And it was a holo pattern that wasn't on the picture, just on all of the bordery stuff. And we had Fan Rotom, Frost Rotom, Heat Rotom, Mo Rotom, Wash Rotom, all of them, and even Charon's Choice as well, a supporter card that was specifically for Rotoms. Let you search your deck for a Rotom and switch it with any Rotom that you have in play, which was very, very cool. You had the whole suite of Rotoms there. For some reason, Rising Rivals just had a bunch of Rotom as secret rares, and I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of digging it. That made me kind of happy. Now, the other thing we do need to point out here is that there were a couple of Snorlax, including the Level X, that were actually Domino's Pizza promos over in Japan. Now, they made it just into our set normally over here, but over in Japan, you bought pizza and got Pokemon cards. I bought Domino's yesterday. I didn't get no Pokemon cards. That makes me a little bit sad. Now, the pre-release promo here was Tropius, and I have very little to add to that. It wasn't a particularly good or notable card. And the most expensive card nowadays, you're talking Luxray Level X, that's going to set you back about $150. And there are a few things here. I know most of these cards in these Diamond and Pearl Platinum sets aren't terribly expensive, but first of all, Luxray is a moderately popular Pokemon. It's currently carrying me through my run through of Platinum. But secondly, Luxray Level X was an absolute beast that made it into a redonkulous amount of decks, as we're going to see. And if you're playing old formats, you probably are going to want to have a Luxray running around. So, frankly, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a cheap card to get hold of. Now, in terms of the Level X's, obviously we did have a bunch of Level X's. Be rude if we didn't. We had Alakazam E4 Level X. That was an SP one. And, of course, you needed to have Alakazam coming through as an SP Pokemon, because, remember, we don't do Kadabra cards. This was a nice way to pop it in. We had Floatzel Level X. Always had a soft spot for Floatzel. Let you shuffle all your energy from your hand and put them into your deck and do 20 damage for each one you did. It was kind of cool. Flygon Level X was a phenomenal card, which we will get to in a moment. That saw a huge amount of play, and well, in 2009, it almost won Worlds in Seniors, and it almost won Worlds in Masters. Fell a bit short of both. Galady 4 Level X was another card that didn't see a huge amount of play, but was still kind of cool. Hippowdon Level X was a very nice, fun card. It had the ridiculous Poker Power Sand reset that made each player shuffle all cards in play, other than Pokemon and supporter cards, and put them into their deck. Basically, energy and tools and things of that nature. Infernape 4 Level X was a very cool card that ended up winning US Nationals. We'll come back to that. Luxray GL Level X was hands down the best card in the set. And shall we say, we're going to mention that a few times before this video is done. Miss Magius GL Level X was kind of fun. As often as you like during your turn, you could return a Pokemon tool or TM from your Pokemon to your hand, so that essentially you could just move all your tools around. And Snorlax Level X was my favourite of them. I adore the artwork. I love that it was a pizza promo. And it even let you draw until you had 6 cards in your hand, as long as you were active. I like Snorlax Level X. I don't know how great a card it was, but oh my goodness, I loved it. Actually, I don't know how great a card it was. It was fine as a kind of fun little draw engine, not a particularly great card. I know exactly how good it was. Not as good as I wanted it to be. Hey-ho. Now, we should take a little bit of a look at the theme decks as well, as we tend to do. Once again, there were 2, Drill Point and Cutting Edge. Now, Drill Point was a Rhyperior-themed theme deck. You got yourself a holo version of Rhyperior E4, which was exclusive to the deck. It was a non-holo in the set properly. And then you got yourself a rare Flygon, which was exclusive to the deck. It was only a holo in the set. And remember, that Flygon was... well, the Flygon Level X was amazing. The Flygon was also amazing, so this was a cool thing to get in a theme deck. And it was just a regular non-holo Hippowdon there as well. We then had Cutting Edge, which was a Grass Psychic theme deck with Gallade. And you got yourself a holo Gallade E4, which was exclusive to the deck. It was a non-holo in the set proper. And then non-holos of Mr. Mime E4, which was meh. And Beedrill, which, as we're going to see, was a nuts good card that went and won the World Championships. So both the theme decks did just cheekily slip in a rare card, which was over-the-top brokenly good, which was nice. And if we start off talking about the best cards in the set, we do need to start off talking about Luxray GL and Luxray GL Level X. Cards which, quite frankly, defined the format. Now, Luxray GL itself was fine. It was alright. 3 energy, 70 damage, discard an energy card from your hand, 2 energy, 70. It was fine, it wasn't great. But Luxray GL Level X was phenomenal. It had the Poker Power Bright look, which let you drag a Pokemon from your opponent's bench into the active. And one really important point to note is, at the time, our gusting options were weak to non-existent. People were playing stuff like Poker Blower Plus that did this if you played 2 of the same item card at the same time. It was not a particularly easy thing to do. This was like the best option we had. And it got teched into so many decks. We saw Beedrill decks, the one that won Worlds, played a line of this. We saw Gyarados decks play in this. That Skuntank deck that I told you won Juniors last week, that played a line of this. Because the fact of the matter was, this was such a good card, and Gusting gives you such a big advantage that actually you ended up playing this not particularly because it was better than Gusting options we have nowadays, but because it was better than Gusting options they had at the time. Now, it did also really help that it had free retreat. Remember, you could only level X if you were in the active, and you had to be in the active to level X and then get the poker power, so having free retreat to get out of dodge was nice. And then for 2 energy, but remember, energy gain really meant it was 1 energy, you would do 60 damage. But remember that Gyarados was weak, so all you would actually need here was a Crobat G, and then you would actually be getting a 1-hit KO on a Gyarados. It was pretty good. And you had to do 30 damage to one of your Pokemon, but remember that Garchomp healed all of them, and Poker Turn let you pick one of them up, so it really wasn't a particularly big deal to put the damage on one of your Pokemon. Now, that was the best card in the set, but we also need to just shout out Beedrill here as well. Beedrill was part of the, shockingly, Beedrill deck that didn't win Worlds in 2009. Although, to be clear, so was Luxray. Now, the attack was kind of garbage, but the Poker Power Flutter Wings absolutely was not. Once during your turn, you may search your deck for a grass Pokemon and put it into your hand. So the theory here was very simple, that you would use a combination of this and Claydol to make sure that you would just set up a swarm of Beedrill super quickly. Why did you need to set up a swarm of Beedrill? Well, remember that the Beedrill from Great Encounters for a single grass energy did 30 damage for each Beedrill you have in play. And back in 2009, 120 damage for a single energy was absolutely over the top, ridiculously brokenly good, to the point where, as I said, it literally went and won the World Championships. It was a phenomenal combo. Those 2 Beedrill together were nuts. But so was Flygon. Now, the real main attraction here was Flygon level X. It had the Pokeball Wind Erosion, and a lot of the time this was your win condition. As long as Flygon is your active Pokemon, discard the top card from your opponent's deck between turns. One after your turn, one after their turn, and so on and so forth. But do please remember, it's not just about running your opponent out of cards and winning the game. It is about every time you discard a card, it makes it more difficult for your opponent to set up and do what they want to do. So you weren't just discarding cards to mill them out of cards because if they can't draw at the beginning of the turn, they lose. You were also discarding cards to slow them down, and there came a point where you hadn't won the game, but you had discarded so many cards from your opponent that they couldn't win the game. Also, free retreat kind of helped. And to be fair, 150 damage to a Pokemon level X of free energy really was kind of cool if you could get the energy on. Honestly, most of the time this was played with Trapinch and Memory Berry. This was a Trapinch that for a single energy just trapped a Pokemon in the active. So you would use Trapinch, trap them in the active, and then just sit there milling their cards until they just ran out. Because remember that Trapinch would stop them retreating. And that was it. They just wouldn't be able to play the game and they would lose. Which was fun. But a fairly big part of this was the other Flygon, the non-level X. Now, attack-wise, fine. I mean, the 2 energy, 40 damage, discard a stadium and get immunity was nice to get immunity, but like I say, most of the time you wanted to trap him in the active. And 60 damage plus 10 more for each evolved Pokemon on your bench. These were not bad attacks, but they weren't Worlds winning attacks. And remember, this deck came second at Worlds in both Seniors and Masters in 2009. You won by trapping him in the active and milling. Really, the best thing about this Flygon was the Pokeball Rainbow Float. If any basic energy card attached to Flygon is the same type as any of your Pokemon, the retreat cost for those Pokemon was 0. So if you had something like a Claydol, you could put a fighting energy onto Flygon, and all of a sudden your Claydol would have free retreat. And this was important, because this Flygon was played with Palkia. Now, Palkia was a very cool card we looked at before when we looked at Great Encounters, another great set, which had the Poker Power restructure, which basically you got to switch one of your opponent's bench while they're active, and they got to switch one of your bench with your active. But Flygon meant that your opponent couldn't hurt you because you could just give free retreat to your Pokemon, so whatever they dragged into the active, you just retreated, and whatever you dragged into the active, you trapped there with Flygon until they decked out. It was an awful lot of fun. A deck that I regret not playing. That was a fun deck. Now, Nidoqueen was another stage 2, and we're in a different era of the Pokemon TCG here because I keep naming stage 2 Pokemon that were like nuts good. Nidoqueen here was mostly played for the Pokebody maternal comfort. At any time between turns, remove 1 damage counter from each of your Pokemon. Now, it didn't stack, but it was kind of nice because after your turn, heal 10 from all of your Pokemon. After your opponent's, heal 10 from all of your Pokemon. That added up quickly. Ruthless Tail was fine, free energy, 50 damage plus 10 more for each your opponent's bench. It would see use occasionally, but mostly this was played for the Pokebody here. Now, I mentioned Infernape earlier. Infernape wasn't actually a particularly great card, if I'm honest with you. Infernape was just the best we had. Infernape, the non-level X, 2 energy, 20 to 2 of your opponent's bench. Again, with energy gain, it was fine as a turn 1 option, but really it was all about the level X. Now, the Pokebauer said you may have your opponent switch his or her active with one of his or her bench. Now, the important thing here is your opponent chose which one to switch. It wasn't as good as Luxray, but then you would play it with Luxray, so if your opponent had a good option, you would use Luxray, and if they didn't, you would just use Infernape. Worth pointing out, Infernape did work from the bench. You didn't have to be active, and it wasn't a level Xing of power, it was just an every turn power. Free energy, 100, discard 2 energy was nice, lots of damage was good, but of course, it was hard to get both energy back on every turn, which was a bit of a pain. When the next set came out, we were given Blaziken, and we were given Garchomp, and all of a sudden, this didn't look like such a great option anymore. But the fact of the matter is, when we only had Rising Rivals, this was a pretty good option. So it worked quite nicely. Now, Ambipom G was a weird kind of card. It was really played as a direct counter to Garchomp C level X. That's what it was there for. Because Ambipom, for 2 energy, did 60 damage, as long as your opponent had 0 energy on their active Pokemon. Otherwise, it only did 20. The thing is that Garchomp C level X had 110 HP and a weakness to colorless, so 60 would be enough for a KO. Although Garchomp C had a free energy attack, most of the time they would use energy gain to bring it down to a 2 energy attack, and then they would use double colorless energy, which would be discarded because they had to discard 2 energy to attack. And now all of a sudden Garchomp had 0 energy on, and Ambipom would come in and get a nice 1-hit KO. I also need to give a shout out to Turtwig in this video. Now, Turtwig was a weird card. Now, this is a hard one to explain, and honestly, it was a fun little jokey deck rather than a real player in the metagame. I've done a video about it. I'll link it in the description, or you can just search on the channel. But this was, I called it the silliest deck ever, and I think it still might be. The Pokebody said that if its HP was 60 or less, it did 30 more damage. And for free energy, you did 30 damage, but remove damage counters equal to the damage you did. And there were ways to buff up the HP massively, and then completely heal every time you attacked, and legitimately be tanking with a Turtwig. It was a cool deck, but I'll link the video in the description. It's not one we really need to get into today. Now, I told you last week about SP decks coming around and the tricks that they got. They got a bunch of new tricks in this particular set, like SP Radar, or as I referred to it last week, BB Search for SP Pokemon as an item card. You put any card from your hand shuffled it into your deck, but you got to search for a Pokemon SP and put it into your hand. That was what BB did for any Pokemon as a supporter. This for SP Pokemon, and a lot of SP decks only played SP Pokemon, so it was literally just an item version of BD's, and BB Search saw a lot of play as a really good card. But he also had SP Energy. This was a colorless energy, but if you attached it to a Pokemon SP, it was every type of energy, or any type of energy, but only one at a time. It's literally rainbow energy, but you don't have to take a damage counter. SP Pokemon were kinda spoiled. Now, one very important card was Luxray GL. The attack was kinda garbage, although it hit a fighting weakness, so you might use it occasionally. 30 damage plus 10 more for each energy attached to the defending Pokemon. But far more importantly was the Pokebody Boundary Aura. It turned weakness into 2 times, and this is really important, because back in the Diamond and Pearl era, not all Pokemon had ×2 weakness. Now, earlier in the video, a few minutes ago, I referred to Luxray GL level X getting a one-hit KO on Gyarados if you played a Crobat G to deal 10 damage and bring it down to 120. And some of the eagle-eyed among you might have noticed that Gyarados only has a plus 30 weakness, so Luxray would only do 90 and wouldn't get a KO. But you'd play Lucario. So now all of a sudden that 60 is doubled to 120, and the Crobat G damage will get a one-hit KO on Gyarados. Yeah, that was pretty gosh darned important. And there were plenty of others here, turning Machamp's weakness from a plus 30 to a ×2, so that Uxie level X can get a one-hit KO with Zenblade, though again, you would need to drop 10 damage of a Crobat to do that. It was a fantastically important card. We also saw Aaron's Collection, which was a supporter card that let you search your discard pile for 2 in any combination of Pokemon SP and Basic Energy, and put them into your hand. We've seen better cards in terms of recovery into your deck, but in terms of recovering to your hand, this was really good. Now, there were a couple of other energy/trainer cards we need to mention quickly. Upper Energy was a very cool card. Remember, at the time, double colorless energy was not out. It wouldn't reappear until Heart Gold, Soul Silver. So Upper Energy was double colorless if you were behind on prizes, although it didn't work on level X's. And this was a very cool kind of balanced card. It saw a lot of play, although obviously as soon as double colorless energy came out again in Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Upper Energy became, not to put too fine a point on it, absolute complete garbage. Sorry if that sounded mean. The other card that was very much an occasional tech was Lucian's Assignment. I loved this card. It let you move as many energy from one of your Pokemon to another as you like. Now, personally, I played this in my Donphan Prime deck because of Regirock from Legends Awakened. Regirock from Legends Awakened let you discard 2 cards from your hand and attach a fighting energy from your discard pile to Regirock. So you'd get 2 or 3 energy on there, drop illusions, and all of a sudden, Donphan's second attack for free energy is in play when it shouldn't have been before, and that was a pretty gosh darned important thing. Now, in terms of the top decks, the good news is sometimes we get to a set and it's, well, these cards are good, but I don't know if we can call it a deck from this set. Here we can. Beedrill was a Rising Rivals deck. Yeah, you needed the Beedrill from Great Encounters, but the main cards here were the Beedrill and Claydol from Great Encounters, and then the Beedrill and Luxray from Rising Rivals. Those 2 sets really made the deck. Now, Claydol and the Beedrill from Rising Rivals, they really were your setup. Claydol let you put 1 or 2 cards from your hand onto the bottom of your deck, and then draw until you got 6 cards in your hand. Beedrill let you search for a grass Pokemon. But of course, every time you got a Beedrill in play, that was even better because then you could keep going. Remember that Broken Time Space let you evolve as soon as you wanted to, so that was a stadium that you would have in play. And then you got a Beedrill and you could search for a Kakuna and evolve up because you've already got a Beedrill in hand. And you could have, a ridiculous turn too. If you got a couple of Claydol and a Broken Time Space into play, you could go nuts and you could conceivably get 4 Beedrill into play in one turn. It was that ridiculous. And then you would have the Beedrill from Great Encounters coming in and just doing 120 damage for a single energy. Though weirdly, one of the most important cards in the entire deck was Night Maintenance. Because you needed 4 Beedrill in play in order to do your thing, in order to hit for the most amount of damage. Night Maintenance shuffled free in combination of Pokemon and basic energy from your discard pile into your deck, so again, you would have to draw them. But it just helped you recover your basic energy and Beedrill line. You played a full 4 copies here, or at least the world's winning deck did. Shout out to Steven Silvestro, who did win the 2009 World Championships with this particular deck. Because frankly, you needed all of your Beedrill every turn. Now, Flygon was a deck that came so close, but just couldn't get over the hump. It was played to a final finish in the senior division by David Cohen, who would, of course, just 2 years later win the entire World Championships in the Masters division, which was kind of cool. And it was also played to a second place finish by Sami Sakoum, the best finish a British player has ever had at the World Championships, losing out to Steven Silvestro in the final. Which as a Brit makes me a little bit sad because no Brit has ever won the World Championships, but also a little bit excited because I could still be the first. Though I'd rather cast, just so we're clear. Not that anyone's asking me to cast the World Championships, but you never know, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe one day. Point is, he did very, very well. Now, the deck was, like we said earlier, use Flygon level X to mill your opponent out of cards. They would lose because they couldn't draw a card at the beginning of their turn. But like I said earlier, the more cards you mill, the harder it is for your opponent to actually play the game. You would be copying Trapinch's attack to stop them retreating using Memory Berry, and the Rainbow Float ability on the non-level X Flygon was very important to make sure that you could always get out the active. Palkia level X was pretty big to make sure you could trap whatever you wanted in the active, and matchup was also very important because you had a bad SP matchup because, well, they had lots of poker turn to stop their Pokemon being trapped. But being able to one-hit KO all of them for 1 energy was pretty gosh darn nice. Another option that some players did play was the Mewtwo level X that blocked basic Pokemon, but I preferred Machamp, and given that's the list that came second at Worlds, I think we'll go with that one, if it's all the same. Now, Luxray Infernape is the other deck I want to mention quickly before we finish. The lovely Kyle Puka Sukovic was actually the winner of US Nationals in 2009 with Infernape Luxray. Like I've said, in the next set we would get Blaziken and Garchomp, both of which were better options, but at the time this was the best we had, and it really was using Luxray to force your opponent to switch a particular Pokemon, Infernape to force them to switch, but it was their choice, low energy, comparatively fairly powerful attacks, and just buying yourself time, taking out specific Pokemon, being disruptive while also taking efficient KOs. It is important to note that Puka did play a copy of Ninetales here, because, well, I'll be honest with you, you know I mentioned Mewtwo level X a minute ago and how that could be awkward? Yeah, this was an entirely basic deck. Level X's of basics still counted as basics. So Ninetales would give a pretty nice option. It's one we didn't actually mention when we talked about Mysterious Treasures. Sorry about that. It wasn't really one of the best cards in the set, but it was a nice little tech here, because you could essentially turn Ninetales into the same typing as one of your opponent's Pokemon. And remember that Mewtwo level X was both a psychic type and weak to psychic, so you would be able to do 120 with Ninetales, which of course was the perfect amount of damage to go and get yourself a one-hit KO. Wasn't that nice? Rising Rivals was another set that was just ridiculous. It brought us multiple world-winning decks, and some that came very, very close, as well as building in some other cards that just really did push the game forward. SP decks got a lot better in this set, but let's be clear, in Supreme Victors, which is the next set I've checked and everything, oh, they took another leap again. For now, ladies and gentlemen, it's over to you guys, and it's the usual questions. If you were playing back then, what are your memories of the set? If you weren't playing back then, what do you think about the set now that I've talked you through the best parts? Go nuts, but be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.